When passing by a cemetery, if you see something unclean, never point at it with your hand. If you disturb the gloomy aura it carries, there's a high chance it will relentlessly haunt you, leading to terrifying events. Welcome to the ghost at the grave. This incident took place in Chaoyang village, Tai'an, Shandong province. When he was 9 years old, his mother took him to visit his maternal grandmother in the neighboring village. It was already dark when his mother finally prepared to head home. Despite his grandmother's repeated warnings not to take shortcuts after dark and to stick to the main road for safety, his mother, in order to save some distance, firmly led him through the back path with the child. This shortcut indeed shortened the journey, but it required passing through a cemetery, which was quite eerie at night. Although his mother had taken this path with him many times, it was only on this occasion, when passing by the cemetery, that the child heard a faint sound of lament coming from a tomb. Following the sound, he saw a disheveled woman in white sitting on a grave mound. Although still young, the child could distinguish between human and ghost. Terrified, he pointed at the grave and shouted to his mother, "Mom, there's a female ghost on that grave." However, when his mother looked in the direction he pointed, she saw nothing. She dismissed the idea, stating firmly that ghosts didn't exist in this world. When they looked back at the grave, indeed, the female ghost had disappeared. Although his mother, who grew up in the area, insisted there were no ghosts buried in that cemetery, she was deeply pensive at that moment. She told the child never to point at anything when passing by graves, no matter what they sought. It was disrespectful to the deceased. She urged the child to spit 3 times and wipe away any bad luck. Addressing the grave, she said, "Children don't understand. Forgive us," then hurriedly pulled the child away. However, on the way home, the child always felt someone following him. Feeling scared and not daring to look back, he stealthily glanced behind with squinted eyes. Sure enough, there was a white figure behind him, with disheveled hair and white clothes stained with grass and dirt, seemingly with some red liquid as well. The child was certain it was the same female ghost he had seen earlier, but afraid of being scolded by his mother, he didn't dare to shout again. At dinner, feeling inexplicably uncomfortable, he barely ate and said he wanted to sleep, cuddling with his mother and brother. His parents, sensing something amiss, were surprised when they were awakened by a loud thud in the midnight. Groggily looking out the window, they were terrified to see the female ghost from the cemetery staring at them through the window. Her hair was long, covering most of her face, with only a slight upturn of the mouth, emitting a foolish laughter. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, revealing that the woman had no eyeballs, only 2 large black sockets. As she grinned, half of her tongue was visible, making her appearance even more terrifying. The child was thoroughly frightened this time, letting out a terrified scream. His parents rushed in, only to find him trembling under the blanket, shaking even harder than Wang Lawu next door who had suffered a stroke. It took his mother considerable effort to pull him out of bed, trembling, pointing at the window and saying, "The female ghost from the grave should go hanged." However, when his parents looked out the window, they saw nothing. Perhaps due to excessive fright, the child developed a high fever and vomited throughout the night. Early the next morning, when Grandma, who had rushed over upon hearing the news, saw his mother, she immediately began scolding her, admonishing her to listen to the elderly and avoid trouble. His mother, knowing she was in the wrong, hung her head in silence. Grandma sighed and said, this female ghost was also a pitiful soul. She wandered around in madness during her lifetime and was picked up by the village's Li Gongdan to be his wife. This woman had mental issues, so Li Gongdan kept her chained to the bed all day long. A year later, she gave birth to a chubby boy, and her mental state seemed to improve. But misfortune always seeks out the unfortunate. For some reason, the child died before he was even a year old. Li Gongdan blamed the woman for not taking care of the child, and he vented all his anger on her, gouging out her eyes, cutting off her tongue, and taking her life. After burying the woman in a random grave on the hill, Li Gongdan fled. There wasn't even a tombstone on the grave. However, shortly afterward, villagers found Li Gongdan dead in a mysterious manner on the woman's grave, with his eyes and tongue missing. Grandma said that although people often saw the female ghost in the village, most of them were half-grown boys. Despite her terrifying appearance, the ghost harbored no ill intentions. She just loved children. Grandma didn't know how to send the ghost away, but a few days later, the child returned to his normal self. However, whenever he saw a grave, he always kept his distance, afraid of attracting unclean things.